These days, the Super Bowl halftime show is far more than just a musical performance. It has evolved into a massive, almost mythic mirror reflecting the culture of the world back at itself in a way that few other stages can even dream of achieving. Every year, hundreds of millions of people don't just tune in to watch a football game, they settle in, eyes glued to their screens, not just for the fleeting scores or the excitement on the field, but for those few electrifying minutes filled with dazzling lights, sweeping music, choreographed spectacle, and messages that somehow manage to be both intimate and global at the same time. And yet, the strangest part of all this is that this very stage, now considered the pinnacle of live performance on Earth, wasn't always taken seriously at all. Decades ago, it resembled nothing more than a massive school band routine, with flags waving, precision marching, geometric formations, and an almost polite, forgettable quality that made it charming in a quaint way but culturally invisible. Nobody expected it to become what it is today, and in many ways, that makes its transformation even more remarkable. This video tells the story of that evolution, how a simple halftime break turned into one of the most influential and culturally significant platforms in global pop culture, where the world tunes in not just to watch, but to see itself reflected in the spectacle. If we were to pinpoint the exact moment when everything changed, when the halftime show transcended its modest origins to become a cultural phenomenon, it would have to be the year 1993. Michael Jackson stepped onto the Rose Bowl field that night, and from the very first note, it was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. He didn't merely perform a handful of hits, he transformed the entire halftime into a full-blown concert, orchestrating every beat, every moonwalk, every flashing light, and every message of unity, hope, and human connection into a seamless, unforgettable narrative that commanded the attention of millions in the stadium and across the globe. Songs like Jam, Billie Jean, Black or White, and Heal the World weren't just performed, they were woven together into a living story of music, movement, and emotion, punctuated by choreography that seemed to defy gravity and technology that, for the first time on this stage, made the performance feel cinematic, immersive, and monumental. For the first time ever, more people watched the halftime show than the football game itself, and the media collectively realized that this was no longer a side act, it was the main event. From that moment on, the halftime show entered the realm of the truly iconic, and there was no turning back. A few years later, in 2007, Prince elevated the art form to a level that seemed almost impossible to match. Under a downpour that drenched the stadium and turned the stage into a treacherous, slippery battlefield, Prince stood under a wash of purple lights, guitar in hand, delivering a medley of his greatest hits that culminated in the transcendent finale of Purple Rain. The combination of rain, stage, music, and legend created a moment that felt more like a carefully crafted movie sequence than a live performance, a moment so powerful that it was instantly etched into collective memory. Prince didn't just perform, he demonstrated that the halftime show could be a vessel for timeless cultural moments, capable of carrying weight far beyond the boundaries of sport or entertainment. But to truly appreciate the magnitude of what the halftime show had become, we have to understand where it came from. In the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, this stage was completely unrecognizable compared to the modern spectacle. Superstars had no place here. Instead, the field was dominated by college marching bands executing flawless formations, flags waving, and geometric patterns sweeping across the grass with military-like precision. The goal was simple, clean, family-friendly, patriotic entertainment designed to please a wide audience, not to shock, inspire, or engage with contemporary culture. Occasionally, legends like Ella Fitzgerald appeared, lending their brilliance to the event, but these instances were exceptions, fleeting sparks in an otherwise controlled, ceremonial landscape. During this era, one group in particular became synonymous with the halftime show, Up With People. Their eternally cheerful young performers, radiating optimism and singing songs about unity, bright futures, and communal spirit, dominated multiple shows throughout the 1970s and 80s. Their peak came in 1986 with Beat of the Future, the first halftime show to cost over $1 million, featuring hundreds of performers, elaborate set pieces, floating cityscapes, and fantastical sci-fi inspired elements. It was a grand, theatrical affair, unlike anything seen before on a sports stage. Yet despite the spectacle, it was a performance disconnected from the music that young people were actually listening to, disconnected from the pulse of contemporary pop culture, and ultimately, disconnected from the wider world outside stadium walls. The charm was undeniable, but it was ceremonial and symbolic rather than culturally relevant. And perhaps the strangest moment of this era came in 1989, when a pseudo-magical, fake Elvis dubbed Elvis Presto emerged from a giant, mechanized jukebox in what NBC billed as the first ever 3D broadcast. Millions of viewers donned red and blue glasses and were met with confusion, motion sickness, and mild headaches rather than awe or excitement. That performance inadvertently proved that the old halftime show had reached a creative dead end and that the stage was in desperate need of a cultural revolution, a revolution that would arrive only a few years later with Michael Jackson. The 2000s ushered in the era of superstar dominance, but it wasn't without turbulence. One of the most infamous moments in live television history occurred in 2004, during the performance by Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake. As Justin pulled at part of Janet's top in the climactic moment of Rock Your Body, her breast was briefly exposed on live TV. Although this incident was later euphemistically labeled a wardrobe malfunction, the reality was far more consequential. Networks scrambled desperately to cut the feed, but the damage was done. Millions of viewers had already witnessed the moment. America's reaction was immediate, harsh, and unprecedented. The FCC levied multi-million-dollar fines against CBS, and live broadcasts across the country were mandated to include a 5 to 7 second delay to prevent similar incidents. Justin Timberlake managed to navigate the aftermath with minimal professional impact, but Janet Jackson faced near total exclusion from mainstream platforms. Grammys, radio play, and tours were all affected. This watershed moment forced the NFL to recognize that the halftime show was not merely a musical platform, it was a complex cultural battleground, fraught with issues of race, gender, and morality, requiring a delicate balance between entertainment, spectacle, and societal expectation. For several years following, the league opted for safe performers such as Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, and The Who, all reliable, family-friendly, and sponsor-approved, as it sought to restore public confidence in the event. After 2010, the halftime show underwent a transformation even more profound than before. It ceased to be just a question of safety or risk and became a stage where America's diversity, identity, and cultural conflicts could be expressed in full view of the world. Artists like Beyoncé, Bruno Mars, Lady Gaga, The Weeknd, and Rihanna turned the halftime show into a massive, multi-layered visual and cultural experience, blending elaborate lighting, complex choreography, immersive storytelling, and subtle commentary on identity and social issues. Within this wave, hip-hop, long marginalized in mainstream televised performance, finally arrived at the center of America's biggest stage. In 2022, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar commanded the field, bringing the streets of Los Angeles, the lived experience of Black America, and decades of cultural struggle to the forefront. Their performance wasn't just nostalgia, it was a declaration: hip-hop is no longer a fringe genre. It is the dominant cultural language of a generation and an essential pillar of modern American identity. Almost simultaneously, Latin music and culture made their mark. In 2020, Shakira and Jennifer Lopez performed in Spanish on the Super Bowl stage, delivering an unmistakable message: this platform is no longer English only. It mirrored the demographic and cultural transformation of the United States, as the Latin population moved from immigrant minority to central cultural and economic force. From that moment on, Latin language, rhythms, and aesthetics ceased to be decorative, they became integral to the narrative of the halftime show, shaping its stories, themes, and identity. That journey reached a symbolic apex in 2026 with Bad Bunny, the Puerto Rican star who sings almost entirely in Spanish, emerging from the worlds of reggaeton and Latin trap to command the biggest television stage in America. His performance was not simply another musical set, it was the culmination of decades of evolution, a vivid testament to how the halftime show had grown from clean, predictable, ceremonial entertainment into an unfiltered, multicultural reflection of the world as it exists today. From university marching bands and eternally cheerful choirs to the show-stopping brilliance of Michael Jackson, the cinematic genius of Prince, the socially resonant power of Kendrick Lamar, and the multilingual, global energy of Bad Bunny, the halftime show tells the story of how pop culture can not only infiltrate a sports league, but completely redefine it, turning it into a mirror for the world itself. No longer just a pause between quarters, the halftime break has become a compressed, electrifying fusion of music, politics, identity, and entertainment, a few minutes where the pulse of the world can be seen, heard, and felt in real time. And that is precisely why, even today, audiences around the globe still fix their eyes on this extraordinary stage year after year.